There is a desert where thunder never comes. No rain, no clouds, just a white sky and endless sand that swallows men and cities alike. On that land, people used to say, if you hear thunder even once, it means the sky is angry with a king. And in the city of Odan, the sky had been silent for 20 long years. The last time thunder spoke, a king made a deal that cursed them all. Odan was carved into the side of a red cliff, its roofs flat and its streets tight, built to hide from the sun. Once it was a city of traders and spices, a place where caravans rested and children chased each other through alleys full of laughter. Now, at dusk, the streets were almost empty. Doors were barred, windows shut. People whispered prayers to gods they were not even sure were listening. Because when the last light faded and the first stars appeared, something else woke up under the sand. They called them sand wraiths, pale, half-formed bodies made of dust and shadow, with empty eyes that glowed faintly gold. They slid through walls, slipped under doors, and pulled people into the ground without leaving a single footprint behind. Every night, someone disappeared. Every morning, there were more soft, empty spaces at breakfast mats, more quiet houses, more eyes that refused to look at the cliff where the palace sat. At the centre of that palace, sitting on a throne built from bones of animals that no longer existed, was King Baruk. Once he had been called Baruk the Protector. Now the people had another name for him, but only in their hearts. Baruk the Oathbreaker. The story of his sin was simple, the way most disasters are. 20 years ago, the desert swallowed the rain. Wells dried. Children cried through the night. People died with cracked lips and sand in their lungs. The priests said it was a test. Baruk decided it was an insult. So he went to the edge of the world, or at least the edge of the map his people knew, and stood before an ancient stone circle buried in the sand. There he called on something old and hidden, something that answered in a voice that sounded like a distant storm and grinding stone. I will bring water to your people, the voice said, but every life I save now will be a life I claim later. Agree, and the rain will come. Baruk did not think about later. Kings like him rarely did. He agreed. Rain poured for 7 days. Wells overflowed. Children danced naked in the streets. People blessed Baruk and called him chosen. Nobody asked what the price would be. The wraiths were their answer. They did not kill immediately. They waited. They let children grow, lovers marry, parents breathe easy. Then, when the city finally felt safe again, the first person vanished in the night. That was year 1. By year 20, Odan was a city built on quiet panic. On one of those evenings, when the sun was sliding down like a red coin about to fall off the edge of the world, a lone figure walked toward Odan's gate. He wore a sand-stained cloak with the hood pulled low, a spear on his back wrapped in cloth, and a sword at his hip. His steps were steady, not like a trader exhausted from travel, not like a refugee fleeing danger, but like a man who had walked deserts before and knew they were nothing compared to what lived in palaces. At the gate, 2 guards crossed their spears. "State your business," one said, though his voice was tired. Anyone coming in at this hour was either desperate or mad. The stranger lifted his head. The guard's eyes widened. "Jalil," he breathed. The man pulled down his hood fully now. His hair was cut close, his jaw sharp, his eyes dark and steady, with the kind of stare that had seen too many good men fall. A thin scar ran from his left ear to his cheek, a reminder of a battle most people in Odan preferred to forget. Jalil had once been captain of the king's guard, the strongest spear in the city, the man who walked beside Baruch when they called him protector. He had also been the first and only man Baruch ever exiled. "Let me pass," Jalil said quietly. The other guard swallowed. "You should not be here. If the king sees you..." "If the king is smart, he will stay in his palace and pretend I never came back," Jalil replied, stepping forward until the crossed spears pressed against his chest. "I am not here for him." The first guard hesitated, then moved his spear aside. 20 years, and you choose now to return?" he muttered. "You always had bad timing." Jalil's eyes flicked to the sky, where the last strip of light was fading. "On the contrary," he said, "my timing is perfect. The debt is almost full. That means the thing Baruch bargained with is almost done feeding." He glanced back toward the desert, where the dunes rolled like frozen waves. And when something like that finishes eating, it does not disappear. It looks for more. The guards said nothing to that. They let him in. Inside Odan, Jalil walked streets that felt familiar and wrong at the same time. The houses were the same, but the sounds were different. Fewer children, more coughing, more silence between footsteps. He passed a fruit seller closing her stall. She froze when she saw him, eyes widening, then softening. "Captain Jalil," she whispered. "I thought you were dead." "I thought the city would be free by now," he answered. She looked away. "Every night they come," she said, voice low. "They do not knock. They do not speak. They just take." Her fingers shook slightly as she tied a cloth over her basket. "My husband vanished in year 10, my son in year 16. If they take my last child, I will walk into the sand myself." Jalil's jaw clenched. "Not if I can help it." The woman gave a sad, crooked smile. "You could never fix the king," she said. "What makes you think you can fix the desert?" Jalil lifted the wrapped spear on his back. "Back then, I had only this city's steel. Now I have something older." He found the man he was looking for, sitting where he always used to sit, on the edge of the old well, hands folded over a wooden staff, eyes half closed like a lizard enjoying the last warmth of the sun. Musa, the oldest priest in Odan. "Your god is still as lazy as before," Jalil said, dropping his cloak beside him. "You would think 20 years of wraiths would wake him up." Musa did not open his eyes. "If the gods moved every time men made a stupid bargain, the sky would be too busy to hold stars," he replied. "I see exile has not taught you respect." "It taught me something better," Jalil said. "It taught me where to find the storm spear." Now Musa opened his eyes, slowly, carefully. "That is not a name you should speak loudly." "Too late," Jalil answered, unwrapping the cloth on his back. Inside lay a spear unlike any the city had forged. The shaft was dark, almost black, but it held a faint shimmer like rain seen from far away. The blade was silver, thin, and etched with lines that looked like frozen lightning. Musa's lips tightened. "You went to the Hanging Valley." "Yes." "You passed the stone guardians." "Yes." You spoke with the thing in the clouds that never fully show themselves. Jalil's eyes flickered just for a moment. It spoke, he said. I listened. Then I made my own bargain. Musa leaned closer. What did you give? Jalil looked toward the palace on the cliff, then toward the smallest houses pressed closest to the city walls. My name, he said. My future. My place among the living. When this is over, I will not sit and eat dates with old men in the market. I will not grow old and tell stories. When I throw this spear as it is meant to be thrown, I belong to the sky. Musa's eyes were full of both fear and pride. You came back to die with us then? Jalil shook his head. No, he said. I came back so you do not have to die with us at all. Night fell. The city held its breath. In the first minutes, nothing happened. Sometimes that was worse. Waiting, wondering which wall would thin first, which house would grow cold, which child would feel a hand made of dust close around an ankle in the dark. Then the sand began to move. Not just outside the walls, inside them. In courtyards, in alleys, under beds, tiny streams of dust pulled together into bigger streams, all flowing through the streets like rivers, heading toward the wide square in front of the palace. Musa stood on the old well, staff raised, voice calling prayers he had not used in 2 decades. Mothers held their children close. Men gripped knives they knew were useless. And in the centre of the square, Jalil planted the storm spear in the ground and watched the desert gather. The wraiths rose slowly, one by one, until there were dozens, then hundreds. Pale forms with hollow faces, and gold burning faintly where eyes should be. They did not speak. They did not hiss or roar. They just turned their heads in the same direction, toward one place, up to the balcony where King Baruch stood, wrapped in heavy cloth and jewels that glittered even in the thin moonlight. You see what you have done, Jalil called, without taking his eyes off the wraiths. 20 years ago, you bought time with our shadows. Now they have come to collect their change. Baruch gripped the balcony rail so hard his rings cut his skin. You were the one who told me to protect the city at any cost, he shouted back, voice breaking. You swore an oath to me. I swore to protect Odan, Jalil answered, not the pride of one man. The sand wraiths began to move, not toward the palace, toward the people. They flowed like smoke, slipping around Jalil on both sides, spreading out to touch every life in the square. Jalil closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He remembered the hanging valley, the way the clouds there moved against the wind, the way the air smelled like metal before rain, the way the invisible presence had spoken inside his chest rather than in his ears. When you stand between the desert and its food, the storm had told him, you will not be enough. You are too small, too mortal. The only way to stop a bargain like the one your king made is to stack another oath on top of it, a stronger one. What kind of oath? Jalil had asked. One that costs more. Now, in the square, he wrapped his hand around the spear. Lightning stirred somewhere far above the white sky, where thunder had been silent for 20 years. People of Odan! Jalil shouted, voice cutting through the whisper of sand. Your king sold your shadows. I will buy them back with mine. The first wraith reached a small boy in the crowd, fingers of dust reaching for his chest. Jalil ripped the spear from the ground. He felt it wake up in his hand. Wind rushed across the square, sudden and cold, slamming into walls, lifting loose cloth, making torches bend and almost die. The wraiths paused, their heads tilting as if listening. Jalil lifted the spear high. For a moment he hesitated. He thought of the life he could have had, a quiet house, children running through the courtyard, old age sitting beside Musa laughing at young men's mistakes. Then he thought of the boy in front of him, the fruit seller's last child, staring at the wraith with eyes too big and too frightened. "Take me," Jalil whispered to the sky, "but let them go." He threw the spear. It did not arc like a normal weapon. It did not fall. It rose. Up and up and up, a streak of silver cutting through the night, vanishing into the blank white sky. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then, for the first time in 2 decades, thunder spoke. It did not rumble. It cracked. The sound ripped across the city, shaking dust from roofs, making knees buckle. Light exploded across the sky as a bolt of blue-white fire slammed downward, not as a straight line, but as a storm shaped like a man holding a spear. The lightning hit the square. It flowed through Jalil rather than around him. His body glowed from the inside, his eyes purely white, his scars burning like fresh cuts. He lifted his arms wide as the storm poured through his chest and into the ground. The wraiths screamed without mouths. Their bodies, if they could even be called that, tore apart under the light. The sand that made them crumbled, turned black, and blew away as smoke. One by one they shattered, each flicker of gold in their faces winking out, until the square was full of ash and stunned silence. When the light faded, Jalil was still standing, but he was not exactly there. Every person in the square saw a different thing. Some saw him as clear as before, chest rising slowly. Others saw only a faint outline, as if he were already halfway transparent. Musa stepped forward on shaking legs. "Jalil," he said, voice hoarse. "Come down. Sit. Breathe. You did it." Jalil looked at his own hands. They were made of light. Thin threads connected his chest to the sky, and behind the clouds he felt something huge and wild, pulling, tugging, calling. He smiled sadly. "I told you," he said. "When I threw the spear, I stopped belonging down here." He turned his face toward the crowd. Their eyes were on him, full of something he had not seen in Odan in a long time. Hope. "Listen to me," he said, voice steady now. "The desert is hungry. It will always be hungry. There will be other kings, other bargains, other temptations. You must remember this night. Remember that no trade is worth your children's shadows." He looked up at Baruch on the balcony. The king's face was pale. For the first time in years, he looked small. "You are not a storm," Jalil told him. "You are just a man. Start acting like one." Then he let go. His body broke apart into a swarm of tiny sparks that flowed upward. The sky, still bright from the lightning, swallowed them. The threads that connected him to the city thinned, then snapped, one by one. For a moment, the people of Odan heard something that sounded like laughter in the thunder. Then the storm spread across the desert and rolled away. It rained that night, not enough to flood. Just enough to wash the dust from the streets, to cool the roofs, to clean the tears from people's faces as they stepped out and tilted their heads back, mouths open for drops they had almost forgotten how to taste. Musa lifted his hands and let the water soak his sleeves. "He is not gone," he said quietly to the fruit seller standing beside him, holding her son close. "Men like that do not vanish. They change shape." "What do you mean?" she asked. Musa looked at the sky where distant flashes still flickered over the far dunes. "As long as you hear thunder," he replied, "someone like Jalil is still watching your city." Years later, children in Odan played a new game. They would stand in the square where the ash of the wraiths had once laid, hold sticks like spears, and shout to the sky, "I will buy back your shadows." When thunder answered, quiet and far away, they would laugh and run, not in fear, but in something far more dangerous, for curses and dark bargains. They ran in hope, and somewhere above the desert, that thunder had finally remembered. A shape made of cloud and light watched them. He carried no crown, only a spear-shaped flash that always seemed ready to fall wherever someone was foolish enough to make a deal that hurt the innocent. People who walked the desert at night sometimes said that when they almost died, when the sand nearly pulled them under or bandits almost cut their throats, a sudden storm appeared from nowhere. A single strike of lightning pushed death away, and a voice like Jalil's whispered, "Not today." You have just heard The Storm Spear of Odan on Blades and Battle Stories. If you want more warrior legends filled with sacrifice, steel and storms, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments what kind of warrior should rise in the next story.